5th year.
What's behind this door? Is the bathroom?
Hey, Lisa, Chris never knew there was a bathroom back here.
Oh, really? Oh,
No, he was like, what's behind this door, Linda?
It wasn't part
that's
of,
my door number 2. Where do you want door number?
it wasn't part of superintendent training.
Hilarious.
He said, what's back there?
Don't tell any of the kids they'll be in their vaping.
We're all laughing at you, Chris, that you didn't know that there was a bathroom back there.
I had no idea. And the control
Well,
booth,
come on,
I
be
just
fair
got a
with him. He's only
5-minute
been here 4
overview of
years.
Oh,
all his controls and everything.
Oh, I've never been there.
Turned on the red light.
What? First time you go through that door and you get to turn on a red light?
Yes. I just said,
He's
"Is
got
this-"
pull, always got pull.
Chris, who do you like in the Super Bowl?
Kansas City.
I think I'm with you on
Aye.
that.
me too. I like Mahomes.
Who do
I
you
think
like,
it's the
or who
Minnesota
do you
connection.
Yeah.
think they'll win?
I just like them because of the Minnesota connection.
Ah, do you think they'll win?
Of course you think
Yes,
they'll win,
of
Lisa.
course I do.
There you go. So I like Kansas
Son-in-law.
City, but I think the other team's gonna win.
Oh,
Well,
think the
without
49ers
Tom
will win.
Brady in there, it's
Yeah.
a little different.
could go either
Super
way.
Bowl than Belichick.
And is Tom Brady done?
Yeah, I don't think he's
No.
said yet.
No, he's coming back.
What's the other one is done? One of the brothers,
Oh, Manning.
Yeah, Manning.
Manning.
Yeah.
Is anybody here old enough to remember when the Vikings had Archie Manning for a year?
yes.
He got sacked about 117 times. He just got
I,
murdered.
Wow.
I remember.
Okay. We're just a few seconds away.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Monday, January 27th, 2020 school board meeting to order. Lisa, will you please call the roll?
Inspector Arndt,
Here.
Inspector Diaz,
Here.
Inspector Walker,
Here.
Inspector Felton,
Here.
Inspector McClellan.
Here.
Inspectors Bjorklund and Law Liberty are absent. Chair McClellan, we have a quorum with 5 present.
Thank you. Will you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on the agenda this evening is for the approval of tonight's meeting agenda, as well as minutes from our Committee of the Whole and regular business meetings on January 13th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next, I'm excited to welcome the secondary building principal, Chuck Wachaki, and his counseling support staff for tonight's Quality in Action. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you, Dr. Webb, School Board Chair McClellan, school board members, and the greater South St. Paul school community. My name is Chuck Ochaki, and I'm the proud principal of South St. Paul Secondary. Tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce you to some of the counselors from the secondary. Every year that I have been here at South St. Paul Secondary, we have added an additional counselor. So from 5 years ago to 5 that we have now. And this was done to better help our students, to better support our students, our families, and the greater school community. And I appreciate the support that the school board has given our counselors. One of the questions that I often get is, what does a school counselor do? And I'm not going to actually explain that for you. I'm going to invite Kelsey McQueen, Mitch Paulson, and Emily Jacobson up to help us understand what a school counselor does. So.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Cool shirts.
Love the shirts.
All right, thank you for having us. We are super excited to tell you a little bit more about the school counseling program at the secondary building. I am Kelsey McQueen, and this year I'm working with our current 8th graders. Shiloh Johnson is our counselor that works with our 7th graders, and she is not able to be here right now.
Emily Jacobson. I'm the new counselor in 6th grade.
And I'm Mitchell Paulson, counselor for grades 11 and 12, and James Fisher is our counselor for grades 9 and 10. He is not able to be here tonight either.
So we're going to start off by giving a little bit of a history of the school counselors in South St. Paul.
So I started at South St. Paul in 2014, and when I was hired by Butch, I was actually the only counselor in our building for grades 7 through 12. So I started, and we put some notes down just as far as ratios of students. So I was, at that time, the only counselor for roughly 1,800 students. And so essentially trying to put out fires all day long and failing miserably at that, trying to keep up. So we continue to advocate for expanding the counseling program. Dr. Webb was great about that. Mr. Ochaki's been great about it. And so every year we've added additional counselors. And so 2015, 2016, we added a counselor when we brought sixth grade up to the secondary building. So we had a 6-8 counselor and a 9-12 counselor. And then we were able to bring on more counselors continuously up to continue to build out the staff to the point now where we have a counselor for each of the grades in middle school, and then myself and Mr. Fisher for the high school. So we have 5 counselors for grades 6 through 12. The American School Counseling Association suggests that you have 1 counselor for every 250 students to be able to effectively to work with students, and we are pretty close to that now. In the middle school, it's 1 to about 260. At the high school, we continue to get closer, where 1 counselor, we each have 2 grades, so about 450-ish students. And so definitely moving in the right direction as we continue to expand. So we appreciate the support in the counseling department. And as someone who's been here by myself to start, it's awesome to have a great team to work with, for sure.
All right, so ASCA, the American School Counselor Association, which Mitch just mentioned, is the kind of the overall framework that we try to work through and think through, and they have a big association across the United States that helps us figure out what we want to focus on, how to focus on it. So we do social emotional work, which is, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's all about the emotional, but a lot of it, particularly middle school, is social. So lots of, oh man, what did I do today? I mediated some friendships. I worked with a boyfriend and a girlfriend to try to work through their issues in 6th grade. You know, helping students have great relationships with teachers, just kind of anything that has to do with the interpersonal skills, whether that be on their own peer level, with their parents, with teachers, with us sometimes. It's just kind of doing all that in individual setting, maybe a small group setting, maybe in a classroom lesson, talking about friendship skills, what it means to have building healthy relationships, trusting relationships. College and career, so planning post-secondary options. A lot of that happens in high school, but we start to talk about career, talent, skills, all of that in middle school as well, so that they're thinking about it as they go through, and they can pick high school courses that align with what they love to do, what they want to do when they get out of school, so that when they get to Mitch and James up in the high school, they have a little bit better of idea of how that would pan out for them. And then the academic side of things, which is always there. We're a school, and so first and foremost, we want our students to be great students, and a lot of that has to do with just building really positive relationships with their teachers, and then because they feel comfortable in the classroom, they're able to access materials. So a lot of times helping students figure out, okay, I might have a personality conflict with this teacher here, but what can I still do in this class to make sure that I'm as successful as possible? And I really love this teacher, so how can I really push myself to be challenged and go further in that area as well, so that they have the best academic success?
So what work have we specifically been able to do, especially since Mitch's first year, compared to now? We all do individual counseling, like Emily expanded on, from social emotional to academic, college and career, prep. Attendance is a big part. Small group counseling. I don't know that Mitch was able to put out one of those fires in small group counseling, whereas now with 5 counselors at the secondary building, we can do small group counseling. Classroom counseling lessons, crisis intervention as things pop up. We are also the 504 case managers in the building. We serve on our student resource team. We are part of the enrollment meetings for all of our new kids who come into South St. Paul, help welcome them, set them up with someone, a student ambassador, to show them around, show them how our lunchroom works, and help them meet people so that coming into a new building, they really feel welcome and part of our Packer community. Parent and team meetings, so specifically now at the middle school that we each have our own grade level, we can be present at every single parent team meeting, which is awesome, because that helps us be able to do our job much more sufficiently and efficiently. College and career preparation, grade level meetings, transition meetings for students who are returning from treatment programs or hospitalization programs, making sure that transition back into the regular school community is smooth and we have supports in place for them as they need it. Assisting teachers with student behavior support, referring students and families to outside resources, and then other non-counseling related duties test prep. Mitch gets a lot of that at the high school level, supervision, sub-coverage, and filing truancy. With that, this is a perfect time because next week is actually National School Counseling Week. So ASCA, the American School Counseling Association, recognizes the first week of February every year as National School Counseling Week, just to really focus public attention on the unique work that school counselors do within the school program. So we really try to be integrated into the academic program. We want to be a great person and resources for our teachers and our families and our students to make their school the most successful it can be. Is there anything else to add?
Yeah.
Questions?
Oh, okay. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you very much.
Questions or comments?
Yeah, comments. I'm a former school counselor, elementary school. So my question to you is, so I've only worked with little kids, and what does a classroom, what does your lesson in a classroom look like with the big kids, with the sixth graders, with, you know, I mean, do you go all the way up to the work that you do?
Yeah, cool. So in middle school, so I used to be a teacher, and so getting back in the classroom also just makes me really happy sometimes because I miss that connection with the kids. So, for example, this year I went in early. I go into the classrooms twice every trimester to do one specific ASCA lesson, which might be academic, looking at how it could be taking notes or social skills and how to ask for help from a teacher. Last fall, actually, I went into all the science classrooms when they were studying matter change, and I taught about vaping. And I just gave a lot of information about vaping. I always try to go in without I'm not going to tell you to do it, I'm not going to tell you not to do it, I'm just going to give you all the information. We brought in all the confiscated vape mods and liquid everything and took the mystery away from it and just said, this is what it is, and what questions do you have? And they were super into it, and it just is I always think of it as a great way to like fill the gaps of the stuff that they don't necessarily get to talk about in the academic world, but is still things we want to be teaching our kids, because they're facing it with their peers with peer pressure, and they're facing it when they're, you know, walking through the mall and they pass a smoke shop. And so I was really happy that they were doing a matter unit because it was perfect. It was, you know, liquid to aerosol. It was perfect. They're like, oh, we just learned about this. And so just good connection, and did a really good language lesson talking about school appropriate language. The teachers have been really on board with it in terms of just being able to participate in a little bit of a different structure. I try to run things in circles a lot of the time so that students get used to that restorative feeling of what it's like to be able to just put your voice out there without having to answer questions about it or being challenged on it. And it's just a space for everybody to be heard. And I just feel like it's one of those places where you can really bridge the social, emotional, or the health side of things into the academics, and teachers have been really receptive of that, and you just get to be in front of a lot of kids very quickly, which is nice too, because then they know who you are, and you don't have to worry so much about like, oh, I've got 260 kids and only 10 of them know who I am after the first week, because then we get introduced a little bit faster.
Really good points. Great, thank you.
Go ahead, Dave.
So just the slide you shared about go back 5 or 6 years, and that's a pretty powerful slide to say we had one counselor 6 years ago, 7, 12.
Yeah.
And to see the, you know, little by little adding a counselor a year over the last 5 years, to now have one at each grade level for the middle school and one for 9, 10, and 11, 12. It's really what the community has been asking for support, more guidance, more counseling, more academic planning, so I can transition well to college or post-secondary experience. So just a shout out to your team, that you have a team and that it's a growing team, and I get to see the wonderful things you do day in and day out. So just on behalf of the board and our community, just thanks for your leadership for kids.
Yes,
Thanks for
We
having us.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Appreciate
Thank you,
being
guys.
here
much.
for sure.
For all you do.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question for all three of you. I'm going to take you back 58 years when I graduated from South St. Paul High School. We had, and the reason I'm talking now is because I wasn't at the meeting earlier, and I have to have so many words a day to stay alive, you know. At any rate, I walked into the counselor's office towards the end of my senior year, and the counselor, which there was one for 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, took a look at my whatever was written there and said, you know, if you were my kid, I'd spank you. And I said, well, what do I do about my future? She said, why don't you go in the service? But my point is, and the question I'm going to ask, if she had said, why don't you go get an education, run for school board, and give back to your community, I probably would have quit school and gone into the service. But have you ever given that advice to a student? And the advice would be, you know, if you were my kid, I'd spank you and go into the service.
Well, none of us want to lose our jobs.
Good answer.
Yeah, that's not really one that they teach us in grad school. So
Oh, it's not, okay.
we stay away from that one as much as we can. Give back to your community. I mean, yeah, we can go there, but
Well, I think the point I was making is I was going to do exactly the opposite of what she said,
Yeah.
you know, and I wish she were still alive today so I could say, hey, I didn't go into the service,
Yeah.
you know. But thanks for your service, okay?
Well, I think one of the great things, just to keep in mind, because I love that example, I had a counselor who said something very similar to me, and I graduated in '05. And
19 or 20?
2005. 2005. It just is, I think there's been a big change around giving advice as opposed to just supporting students in finding their own path. Counseling 15 years ago looked like, here's what I think as a counselor is your best future. And from your transcripts, from your history, from whatever, this is what I think you should do. And it has evolved into more of what I feel like we do, which is, what do you feel passionate about? What do you feel like your strengths are? How can I help you do that
And that
thing
ch-
that you want to do so that you don't have to do the opposite?
Yeah.
You can do exactly what it is, and we're here to help you find that.
That change correlates with the term guidance counselor versus school counselor. So it used to be guidance counselor because they guided you onto what you should do in your future. Whereas now it's school counselor because it really is whole child. Let's look at all aspects, not what on paper you're best to do in your future.
Well, and another thing I'm really happy to see is that we're paying more attention to mental illness in the schools, because that used to be
For sure.
you know, kind of a no-no. We didn't mention those type of things, and that we recognize the possibilities and maybe have some answers for that. So thank you for that also. And this has just been the last 5 years or so, I think.
Yeah. This year we got the opportunity to go into health classes and give intro to mental health, and that brought in so many new students that I had never, in my 3 years here, hadn't never met with. But because we were able to openly talk about mental health in their Phy Ed class, that got them comfortable enough to come in, at least, you know, check in and seek support,
How
which is
great is
awesome.
that?
awesome.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Awesome.
It's good.
And a plug for the Tri-District. Last year, we brought the screening of Angst, which was a documentary about anxiety at the school. This year, we're collaborating with the Tri-District again. So Sibley is going to host a screening of a documentary called Like, which is related to social media, the impacts. And so we just had our first planning meeting for that last Friday, and we'll be bringing that to you. So it's a great opportunity, just the things we can do now as a full department and collaborate to be able to do more stuff. So it's excellent.
Thank you.
So it sounds like the job is really split between dealing with, I'll call them situations. I don't like the boyfriend and girlfriend. Yeah, that need some mediation, and going in front of classes and actually teaching a large group of kids. Is it possible to break down how much percentage-wise is spent doing each of those two types of things, or is it just
Actually,
very
Dr. Webb, do you have that email I sent you this last week?
It's 32.7.
So I did actually put together my numbers, and just for my own, I like to see how much time I'm spending in direct service to students. And I went through, and I think I had about just over 2,000 direct contacts with students so far this year, and I think it was 89% of that was actually directly with students.
Okay.
And the other 11% was parent phone calls, could be emails, could be that. So about 89% of my specific time as a sixth grade counselor has been with a student or students in front of me, either
And I
having a discussion.
I think
or-
that depends on level
Yep.
and
Yep.
style preference. I prefer to be individual and small group rather than classroom. I know Emily loves classroom, so it totally just depends on the style of, you know. our theory.
I think our goal is that the students know who we are. So we're in the hallways, we try to be visible. So many of us, and the stories we hear, like, you had to go to your school counselor to know who it was, or you had to have a specific reason, which led to, even if you went to see the school counselor, there was a stigma there as students, and so that prevented some students from coming to see us. So, I mean, we're out in the hallways, we're trying to be as friendly and a part of the building as we can be. So I don't think any of us spend a whole lot of time sitting in our office waiting for students to come to us. We're trying to be out, we're trying to be active, and it's great because we get to meet the kids and see them outside of just in our office when they're in crisis or talking credits or something else.
Awesome.
And in all reality, we know that it's not an even 100%, right? You're coming in early, you guys don't get lunch, you're staying late.
Eat lunch
I know.
with your group.
Yeah.
When they come in and eat lunch, just eat lunch together.
Yeah.
If you'd like to come around, we'll shake your hands.
All right.
Yes, please.
So glad. I have a fourth grader. He'll be coming soon too. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for what you do.
Hard-working group.
That's great to hear.
It really was.
Next up, Dr. Webb with his superintendent report.
Have a great night. So we have the superintendent's update next on our agenda, and let me make sure that we're displaying it. Yep, there you go. So our superintendent update for January 27th is as follows. At our committee of the whole meeting, just prior to this meeting, we had our budget guiding change document that we gave input on as a school board. So as we head into this budget season, we want to make sure that the school board sets the parameters, I like to call it really the sandbox, to give the sandbox for the administration and all of our staff to kind of work through as we're setting up this coming school year's budget. We do have a budget deficit that we're heading into. We are looking to set a reduction target of just over $1 million. It's about a 1.17 million. So just over $1 million, and so it's never a point where you want to be reducing budgets as a school district, but we need to as state funding continues to not keep pace with inflation. So when you get less than inflation from the state and then you have inflationary costs, many school districts around the state year after year, unless they increase local levies or do additional things, end up having to go into budget reductions. So we're heading into some budget reductions. Just want to say it publicly and on air. School calendar, we are also approving the guiding change document for the school calendar as well. So again, the board setting the guidance for our leadership team and all the our teacher union groups and other feedback groups to weigh in as we come forward here in the months to come. And one of the guidance points that the board gave a nod to is not only to bring forward a one-year calendar, but potentially two as we continue to look at the upcoming couple of school years. So we thought you'd be interested in that. Vision 2025. So Susan Brott's here in the back and is leading our engagement sessions throughout the district and community. She's spoken to student groups, staff groups, community groups. Tomorrow night, we even have one bilingual session for Hispanic parents, for example. We'll have sessions at each of our school sites with parents and students and staff, and you are welcome to come to any one of our meetings. You don't have to be a Lincoln Center parent to just go to the Lincoln Center event. So we want to hear your voice. We want to hear what your vision, what your dream is for South St. Paul schools for 2025. We want to give a shout out to all of our paraprofessionals. It's Paraprofessional Recognition Week all week. So if you know a paraprofessional in our system, take a minute, send them an email, write them a note, tell them thank you, and give them a shout out for all that they do to support our kids. We had a Packer chat. This is the back of the head of the local South St. Paul mayor, Mayor Francis, meeting with a couple of our kids at the secondary building. We had probably 50 kids a lunch come in and have great conversation about this topic this week was, what was the relationship, how are the relationships between students and staff in the building? So open conversation gets at the heart of good relationships, great schools, and we are probably one of the few places in the country that would open up the doors for that kind of conversation. So I recognize the students. I want to give the shout out for the students, for Jess Davis for continuing to support and facilitate these conversations, and the South St. Paul Secondary Administration for just the openness to allow that to be happening in the school, to hear ideas for improvement each Packer chat, and then continue to grow and improve as a school district. So way to go. We always have a number of upcoming events, everything from kindergarten registration to when our schools are closed. Continue to follow on our website if you want any detailed information coming forward. And that's it. We'll go back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Webb. Moving on to the regular business portion of our meeting, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent items on tonight's agenda, which include financial claims, bills payable, and staffing as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving into the policy section, as a point of reference, school district policy number 208 requires policies under review to be placed on 2 consecutive school board meetings and review comment by board members, staff, and community. We have a series of policies on tonight's agenda for their second reading. These policies will remain under review until their recommended approval on February 10th, 2020. All of these policies can be found on our website. We have one business item tonight. It's for the approval of the resolution supporting local decision-making authority. This resolution will be moved and read by Chris.
Thank you, Jeff. Be it resolved that the School Board of South St. Paul Public Schools, Special School District 6, supports local decision-making authority and opposes legislation that restricts the ability for locally elected school boards to respond to the needs of their districts, students, and communities.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Dr. Webb, could you share some information about this?
I sure could. So years ago, probably 20 years ago, school boards had the authority to make decisions which have been stripped from their power over the last 2 decades. And so this statewide initiative from the local school boards association saying, hey, we believe that school districts and school boards should have similar rights to even what city councils do. And we think that every school board in the state should pass this resolution. So it's really, can we bring the power back to the local school boards that interact with the local community to do what's right for kids? The governor spoke about this just last week, and he said, actually, the Minnesota Mosquito Control Board has more power than school boards do at decision-making. So we need to give power back to local boards, and that's what this initiative is all about.
Thank you, Dave. Is there any other discussion? Lisa, would you take the roll?
Inspector Felton?
Yes.
Inspector Diaz?
Yes.
Inspector Walker?
Yes.
Inspector Arndt?
Yes.
Inspector McClellan?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. That's it for the evening for tonight. We'll have board reports starting on the end with Chris.
Thank you. Over the last couple of weeks, done a couple things. We went to the Minnesota School Board Association annual conference, a chance to learn and also connect with other school board members throughout the state. So very helpful. I attended breakout sessions regarding budgeting. We actually did a breakout session on school board's decision-making, and heard great speakers. Dr. Webb mentioned the governor was there. So it's very worthwhile and something that comes up once a year and is time well spent. Also, the school event that I went to, I talked about at the COW meeting, was the gymnastics meet. And I just was so impressed with the team and how they've set their goals to just develop the gymnasts and the participants. And you can see in the scores and in the faces of the athletes that they're accomplishing that. So a shout out to the gymnastics team, and that's what I have.
Thanks, Chris. Linda?
The only thing I have is the elementary schools are starting their second semester, so good luck.
Great. Wendy?
First, I want to put a shout out to the theater department and Mr. Holson, his students, and his staff. If you recall, 2 weeks ago when we had that storm come through on the weekend, that was when their one-act plays presentations were to be presented, and unfortunately, due to weather concerns, those nights were canceled. So they rescheduled it for this past week, and I just want to thank the students and the staff for realigning their schedules and being able to put on the show. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend the reschedule, but I just want to thank everyone for coming back and changing their plans to attend. And also for the theater department, they're already doing their spring play auditions, which are being held today and tomorrow at the secondary building, so grades 6 through 12. If you want to be in the spring theater production, check the bulletin board or get in contact with Mr. Holson. And as a reminder, too, Dr. Webb had mentioned kindergarten registration is this Thursday evening at Lincoln Center and Kaposia at 6 o'clock. Feel free to visit the district website or call the individual buildings for more information if needed. And as a reminder to all students and staff, this Friday, the 31st, is Unity Day in South St. Paul, and we are encouraging students and staff to wear orange to show unity in pride and anti-bulliness awareness. So if you think of it, wear an orange shirt. It's not Halloween, but still dig out your orange shirts if you have something to wear on Friday. And a couple other activity events. A shout out to our boys swim team. They came in third this weekend at the Tartan Invitational Tournament, so good job to the boys swim team. And also our wrestlers. It was the Pete Feldman Home Invitational this past weekend at our secondary building, and our wrestlers came in third out of 16 teams. So great job to those students. And a personal note to the Veldman family. Mr. Veldman recently passed away, so as a former South St. Paul District Administrator, Athletic Director, a lot of different things that Pete did for our system. We send our condolences to the family. And I also was able to attend the MSBA conference. It's always a great experience, a great learning time. And we appreciate the School Board Association for putting that on to Minnesota school districts at no charge. I believe they are probably the only school board in the entire nation that does these annual conferences at no charge to the districts. So we thank MSBA for that. And everybody drive safe. It's still a little slick out there. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you, Wendy. Bill?
The past 2 weeks have been an athletic whirlwind for me. I saw a hockey game for the first time in about 15 years. And then on a Thursday, I saw a basketball game. Friday, or was it Friday or Saturday, a wrestling triangular with Sibley, and South St. Paul. And then Mr. Sexauer told me that there was a gymnastics going on in the competition gym, but he didn't tell me it was over at Central Square. Mm-hmm. So I missed it. But Chris, just out of curiosity, who's the coach of the girls?
Kelsey Walker is the coach of
that's what I thought.
Gymnastics team.
Okay, so I did miss the gymnastics and apologize to Kelsey for me.
Well, this Thursday coming up.
What time?
There's still time.
6:30.
3 to 6:30, and it is in fact at Central Square?
It's at 6:30.
And it's
at Central Square.
At Central Square?
Yes.
Okay. I will do my best. I'll go home and write
All
it on
right.
my calendar.
Thank you, Bill. We don't have a closed session tonight. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.